This Family Life News podcast is made possible by the support of listeners like you.
It's the Noon Report from Family Life, bringing a Christian worldview to what's happening in New York, Pennsylvania, across the country, and around the world. Weather with Kevin Williams, and faith-focused feature stories with the Family Life News team. Now, here's what's happening.
It's the cold that just won't quit. Good afternoon. Welcome aboard. Overnight lows dipping to well below zero last night, and it stays uncommonly cold right through the weekend. Reporter Stephanie Goss.
The snow, ice, and bitter cold are definitely uncomfortable, but they are also dangerous. The death toll stands at 85 across the country, and already hard-hit communities are now bracing for more with another major winter blast on the way.
Forecaster Rob Marciano says a bomb cyclone is on the way, and it will punish areas from the Carolinas to Cape Cod this weekend.
Blizzard conditions potentially along the Outer Banks, and then missing New York and much of the big cities, including Boston. But it looks like Eastern Mass will get clipped with this as well. As far as how much snow we expect to see, 6 to 12 inches in spots across North Carolina and Virginia. That's certainly possible. Maybe more in some spots.
A 1,000-mile stretch of the East Coast will be impacted by this bomb cyclone. President Trump's picked a former Wall Street banker to succeed Jerome Powell as chairman of the Federal Reserve Board.
Kevin Warsh, 55 years old, an academic economist, somebody who's also worked on Wall Street, will come in there and have to lead a very, very important central bank with a president who technically is not his boss. Congress would be his boss.
Business analyst Christine Romans. More on the Warsh nomination from correspondent Garrett Hake.
Warsh has long experience in banking and economics and in politics, having been nominated to the Fed board previously during the George W. Bush administration, at which time he was the youngest Fed governor ever.
The president says he wants a Fed head who will lower interest rates. The Warsh nomination must be approved by the U.S. Senate. The U.S. Senate is today working on a deal to avert another partial government shutdown. It's a short-term fix that funds the Department of Homeland Security for just 2 weeks. Correspondent Mike Emanuel.
The Senate's plan is to pass a 2-week funding package for Homeland Security at current spending level until February 13th. The House would also have to approve the package, but after the longest government shutdown in U.S. history last fall, it sounds like nobody really wants to shut it down again.
The earliest the House can act on the bill is Monday. Speaker Mike Johnson.
Let's have the discussion about Homeland Security and immigration enforcement after we funded the government. So we'll see what they do. I mean, the jury's still out.
The deadline to avoid a partial government shutdown is midnight tonight. Anti-ICE activists are staging a nationwide day of protest today against federal law enforcement efforts. It comes in the wake of those ICE-involved shooting deaths in Minneapolis. Mayor Jacob Frey.
If we do not speak up, if we do not step out, it will be your city that is next.
Today's nationwide protest calls for supporters to stay home from work and school and not go shopping either. Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro is condemning the District Attorney of Philadelphia, Larry Krasner, for referring to ICE agents as wannabe Nazis. Take a listen.
If we have to hunt you down the way they hunted down Nazis for decades, we will find you. We will achieve justice.
That kind of rhetoric is unacceptable. It is abhorrent and it is wrong. Period. Hard stop. End of sentence.
Shapiro, who is Jewish, says anti-Semitism is a problem for both political parties. New Fox News poll shows Democrats with a slight advantage over Republicans going into the November midterms. Political commentator Stephanie Hamill.
People are leaning towards Democrats when it comes to affordability. So I think the big issue here is that Republicans have to work really hard on messaging.
The poll gives Republicans the edge when it comes to border security. This fall, all 435 House seats and more than 30 seats in the U.S. Senate will be up for grabs. A Minnesota man in custody today after pretending to be an FBI agent so he could try to break accused killer Luigi Mangione out of jail. The suspect showed up at the federal detention center in Brooklyn yesterday, armed with a pizza pizza cutter and a barbecue fork. Criminal defense attorney David Feldman.
When you go to a federal facility, and I've been to many of them, it is like Fort Knox. You can't get in and out of there for anything. So there's definitely probably a mental issue with this individual, I would assume.
The suspect faces charges of impersonating a federal officer. When cops asked him for his credentials, he handed them his Minnesota driver's license. Harvard is making progress on runaway grade inflation. The Ivy League school has reduced the percentage of students with A averages from 60 to 53% over the past year. Now the problem is, how do you rank the cream of the crop? One idea being floated about at Harvard is to give grades of A+. Still to come on the Noon Report. Pile up on the interstate. Snow days piling up at school and too cold to collect the trash. Dee Haley reports. Next.
Good afternoon. I'm Kevin Williams. Atrociously cold air remains locked in across our region today. It's going to stay around for a while. I've got the numbers and the complete forecast coming up in 10.
All right, Kevin, it's so cold today in Buffalo that they've actually suspended garbage pickup for the day. More on that from Family Life's Dee Haley.
City of Buffalo officials have canceled trash and recycling pickup for today because of extreme cold. Dangerously low temperatures are expected throughout the day, making it unsafe for crews to operate. If your neighborhood trash day is today, your next scheduled service will be next Friday. Dee Haley, Family Life News.
Dozens of school districts across the Family Life listening area delayed the start of school this morning due to the extreme cold.
A 2-hour delay allows buses to make sure that they're running properly, that they get started properly in the cold.
Brandon Long with the West Shore School District near Harrisburg says those 2 hours can make a world of difference.
Daylight helps everything. Drivers are able to see the kids easier over the snow. The kids are able to be warmed up just a little bit more by that, too.
Pennsylvania Education Secretary Carrie Rowe.
It's one of the most difficult decisions that we have. We've always centered on student safety first. There's no surprise in that.
Dr. Rowe is the former superintendent of the Beaver School District and says there's nothing harder than making that call on whether or not to cancel school.
There's some parents we would cancel and they'd say, well, you didn't cancel soon enough. And their point's valid.
Other times, she'd call off school the night before.
Then the next day, the weather wasn't something that I would generally have canceled for. So then you get criticism there.
Dr. Rowe points out that some districts in Pennsylvania cover an area of 800 to 1,000 square miles, and the roads in those districts vary greatly. That also factors into the decision on whether to cancel or delay school. Interstate 90 was turned into a parking lot much of the day yesterday between Pembroke and Batavia in western New York. Both sides of the highway closed for several hours after a multi-vehicle pileup.
Like a graveyard of cars and trucks and buses, and there's just something out of a thriller movie.
Stephen Meyer got caught up in the crash and tells WIVB
the conditions were just absolutely terrible. All the damage and all the SUVs, all the cars, all the buses that I seen that got hit. I don't know. Like I said, I've never seen anything like that before in my life. The car I saw between the two semis, I didn't think the person was going to live. The car was like an accordion.
New York State Trooper James O'Callahan.
Originally, we're looking at about 30 vehicles, but now that we're kind of sifting and cleaning through, it might be more like 45 or 50. We have minor injuries, no significant injuries, no fatalities. That's a huge miracle in itself.
Jim O'Neill says his truck was totaled.
It was just a sheet of ice. By the time everyone knew what was going on in the whiteout, everyone was on the brakes, and I'll tell you, it's a really bad feeling trying to figure out where you're going to point your truck because you know you're going to crash. I had to make a choice of either hitting the trucks in front of me, swerving off the road and running over cars, or get on the shoulder and brace for an impact.
No good choices there for sure. Again, a miracle nobody was killed yesterday in that massive pileup on the New York State Thruway. Pennsylvania State Police are rolling out new technology aimed at making traffic stops safer for everyone on the road. Details on that from Family Life's Brian Query.
Even routine traffic stops can quickly turn dangerous, partly why the Pennsylvania State Police unveiled upgraded patrol vehicles on Thursday, designed to improve improve visibility and awareness during traffic stops and emergencies. The new cruisers feature a V-shaped light bar that spreads light wider than traditional designs, along with GPS-based systems that synchronize lights and voice commands between nearby units. Troopers will also be easier to hear thanks to a powerful new siren system. Officials say the upgrades should help drivers see, hear, and respond more quickly, boosting safety for both troopers and the public. Brian Query, Family Life News.
There's a new push in New York to reduce the use of school suspensions. Family Life's Sarah Harnish.
The Solutions Not Suspensions Act has been introduced in both the New York State Senate and Assembly. Senator April Baskin says, quote, statistics show that the student who gets suspended is most likely to get suspended again. And students who drop out of school often have a history of missing school. If passed, the bill would restrict suspension to a maximum of 180 days, limit suspensions for those in pre-K through third grade, and mandate that suspended students receive out-of-school instruction. Sarah Harnish, Family Life News.
Pennsylvania Governor Josh Shapiro calling on the state to pass a cell phone ban for all 500 school districts. Bipartisan legislation was introduced last fall. It requires K through 12 schools implement bell-to-bell bans beginning next year. The legislation, however, is yet to come up for a vote in either the House or the Senate. New York Governor Kathy Hochul's pitching a plan to restrict the reach of social media into kids' lives. She wants to expand age verification and disable AI chatbots so as to better protect children from the harmful effects of social media.
Kids sometimes have trouble distinguishing. They haven't had a boyfriend or girlfriend yet, and they develop an emotional attachment and kind of get lured into this space. They can be taken advantage of.
They don't understand even that they're talking to a machine. They get friendly, and even simple things, innocuous things, can turn into, kind of scary situations where the kids will start talking to the chat bot and say, I really like you. I wish you could come over to my house. And there was an instance where the chat bot responded, can you tell me where you live and I'll come over.
That's Dr. Rahina Srihara at the University of Buffalo. Pennsylvania politicians are proposing a bill that would permit chemical castration for child predators. The bill allows courts to order that surgical procedure for convicted child rapists to prevent them from repeating their crimes. 11 states have such a measure on the books. Those supportive of this effort argue there is no known cure for pedophilia. A new survey shows not as many moms and dads want to coach their kids' sports teams anymore.
The U.S. Center for Safe Sport paints a troubling picture about the future of youth sports. A new survey finds the majority of youth sport coaches are calling it quits because they're tired of dealing with unruly parents of athletes, simply fed up with the verbal harassment and abuse from mom and dad. More than 35% of respondents also say they've experienced discrimination based on sex, age, and physical appearance from parents. Many youth sports coaches are suddenly asking the question, do the hassles outweigh the joys of the job?
Correspondent Erica Herskowitz. We've got more sports next. It's the 2-minute drill on the Family Life Noon Report.
Good afternoon. I'm Randy Snavely. Bob, right now they are a squad nobody wants to go up against. Alex Lyon made 37 saves to set a Buffalo Sabres record with his 10th straight victory. This one 4-1 over the LA Kings. Alex Tuck had the hat trick. Jack Quinn, 3 assists. Ryan McLeod had 2 assists. The Sabres win streak is 5, but they have won 20 of their last 24. It is their winningest stretch in franchise history. Carson Soucy made some history himself after scoring against the team that traded him just 72 hours earlier. The Islanders took down the Rangers 2-1. Soucy became the first player to score for both the Rangers and the Islanders at Madison Square Garden in the same season. And the Islanders swept the back-to-back set against their crosstown rivals. The Penguins scored 4 times in the second period and skated away from the Blackhawks 6-2. Connor DeWar lit the lamp twice to help the Pens to their 5th straight victory. The Flyers got dominated by the Boston Bruins 6-3. Also skating to wins, the Canadiens, Lightning, Devils, Canes, Caps, Blues, the Wild, Oilers, Canucks, Stars, and Kraken. In the NBA, Tyrese Maxey poured in 40 points and scored the game winner with 1.3 seconds left. He led the 76ers to a 113-111 win over the Sacramento Kings. Joel Embiid had 37 points as Philly came back from an 11-point fourth quarter deficit to get the victory. The Nets were in Denver, and Michael Porter Jr.'s return was a good one individually, but not a good one for the team. Porter scored 38 and grabbed 10 boards, but Brooklyn fell 107-103. Also picking up wins, the Wizards, Rockets, Heat, Hornets, Suns, and T-Wolves. That is a look at sports.
Thank you, Randy. Still to come on the Noon Report, the state of assisted suicide in the state of New York. Previewing Governor Shapiro's big budget speech next week, and will it ever warm up again? Kev's got your weekend forecast after this.
Welcome to Breakpoint, a daily look at an ever-changing culture through the lens of unchanging truth. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet. In a recent Substack, Rod Dreher described an art exhibit in Austria entitled, and I quote, "You shall make for yourself an image." As the name suggests, the point of the installation is to blaspheme Christianity, particularly during this season of Advent. One photograph in the exhibit was entitled, "I Am the Mother Too," and featured a man dressed as Mary holding the baby Jesus. The caption reads, "The allusion to the Virgin Mary is clear. The artist addresses the fears and struggles of Bangladesh's severely oppressed and socially isolated LGBTQI+ community," end quote. In another piece, latex nubs are arranged to look like maggots in the shape of a man crucified on a cross. The exhibition's description for this one says, "The artist transforms one of Western culture's most potent symbols into a tactile, erotically charged object," end quote. But the most scandalous piece is Mary holding Jesus after his death. Except in this version, it's a naked woman in a suggestive pose cradling a Jesus who died not from crucifixion, but from an overdose of heroin. In one sense, the entire exhibit should just be dismissed as a childish, boorish attempt to break taboos. It is a particularly crass example of desecration, the growing tendency in Western society to not merely deny, but also violate transcendent truth, objective beauty, and goodness. To a much lesser degree, the insistent backstorying of movie villains is a tamer example of desecration. With sequels, remakes, and reimaginings, well-loved stories are retold in a way that encourages the audience to reconsider the good guys and bad guys. The heroes are deeply flawed. The villains are misunderstood. No one should judge between them. Take, for example, the new Wicked movie. The whole point of Wicked for Good, as the title suggests, is to re-envision the story of Oz, making Dorothy a minor character in The Wicked Witch of the West the heroine. Sleeping Beauty received a similar treatment back in 2014. A live-action prequel was told from the perspective of the evil sorceress Maleficent. And Netflix just announced a new movie called Steps. It's an updated version of Cinderella, in which the originally abusive stepsisters are reimagined as kind and misunderstood. While an occasional movie along these lines might be interesting, the frequency of these is so commonplace that, as Jonathan Peugeot put it in describing the Viennese art show, it's just tedious and boring. Not to mention, like a Broadway lineup that features theater versions of mediocre 90s movies, it just reflects a whole crisis of creativity. And that should make sense to us, because art mostly reflects the worldview and values of a culture. Having rejected a creator, it's no wonder we've lost creativity. But we've also lost truth, beauty, and goodness. Nothing is admirable anymore to be aspired to. No standard remains to hold us back from the moral abyss. Eventually, desecration will make sense to those who are convinced that the sacred is nothing but someone's random moral imposition on us. In contrast, the Christian vision of life begins with God. The God is the source of all meaning and all goodness. Because the Christ that the Vienna exhibit so profanes actually invaded human history at the Incarnation, because he died and rose again, history has meaning and our life has hope. Years ago, Chuck Colson rightly described the Christian life as the proper understanding of the good life. And I quote, What does it take to create the good life? A firm sense of right and wrong and a determination to order one's life accordingly. When men and women act in accord with their true nature, they feel a sense of harmony, contentment, and joy. This is happiness, the fruit of virtue. For the Colson Center, I'm John Stonestreet with Breakpoint.
Thanks, John. Outside we go, Kevin Williams.
Here is your family life forecast. The call for this afternoon, frigid. A mix of sun and clouds, a few flurries, but a couple 3 inches of fresh lake fluff near Lake Ontario. High temperatures this afternoon, single digits and low teens, sub-zero wind chill. It stays frigid tonight, tomorrow, and Sunday with mixed skies and some lake effect continuing south and southeast of Lake Ontario. Low temperatures tonight, mostly below zero. High temperatures tomorrow, low teens, mid-teens then on Sunday.
All right, Kevin, thank you. Hey, folks, it's Friday. Congratulations, you've made it the 30th of January. And this is the Noon Report on Family Life. This is Capital Connection. Fridays during the Noon Report, we give you direct connection to all that's happening in Albany and Harrisburg with the experts on the issues at the state capitals. They are Jason McGuire with New York Families and Michael Geer at the Pennsylvania Family Institute. Well, Jason, I want to begin with you. Governor Hochul promised to sign this controversial Medical Aid in Dying Act, a physician-assisted suicide bill, into law in the month of January. That hasn't happened yet. Do you know why, and what will happen once she does sign that bill?
Yeah, it's a little surprising because, as we were all told, it was going to move in January, and it has not and will not at this point. So we're waiting to see what will happen. I imagine it is just a matter of time, and that the legislature will get around to moving that legislation. But every day that we do not have assisted suicide in our state is a good day for those who are terminally ill.
Yeah, and of course, when she signs the bill, there'll be a 6-month waiting period, and then it'll be the law of the land. And Michael, you're talking about this as well. You hosted a webinar actually yesterday all about the dangers of doctor-assisted suicide. This is not law in Pennsylvania yet, but why did you feel it was important to address this issue head on?
Right, we're trying to get ahead of the curve, at least here in Pennsylvania, when we look at the surrounding states like New York and New Jersey, Maryland, facing these issues. Basically, we wanted to do this webinar, number one, to educate pastors, but general citizens about the legislation pending in the General Assembly about this issue. We don't expect it to move this year, but the results of the election this fall could turn the tide on this, and so we need citizens to be well informed to understand the challenges that are coming and what happens when a state does turn its medical profession into a killing profession. That's not something we want to see here in Pennsylvania.
Yeah, in Canada, 1 out of every 20 deaths now, Jason, is the result of physician-assisted suicide. New York State is about to feel the effects of this. Wondering if you can wax philosophic for a moment or two and talk about what happens to a culture, as Michael mentioned, that normalizes suicide as a medical solution rather than a tragedy that should be prevented at all costs.
Well, I think culturally there is an overall lessening of the sanctity of human life. We have seen it at the beginning of life issues. We are now seeing it at the end of life issues. It puts pressure on those who are terminally ill for financial reasons, for example, to end their lives early so their families can have the life insurance policies that they may need rather than the cost of the medical care. It impacts doctors when they begin to see suicide as an acceptable form of treatment for those that are facing a terminal illness. So there are a lot of problems. I think of disability rights community, folks there that are fighting for their lives every day when they're struggling just to get approvals for wheelchairs and other durable medical devices they might need. Those are costly things. And the doctors tend to question quality of life oftentimes for disabled people. Many of my disabled friends just want to live.
Yeah. Michael, you argue, and you got a great article on your website. We'll give the address at the end. You argue that those who espouse doctor-assisted suicide is about managing pain. Completely wrong, because this is not driven by pain management. More seems to be driven by fear and loneliness and depression. Can you elaborate on that a little bit?
Yeah, we see this epidemic of mental health issues in our country, and then when we see, you mentioned about 1 out of every 20 deaths there in Canada being a result of physician-assisted suicide, or as they call it, medical aid in dying. And in many of those cases, it's, again, that loneliness, depression, and those sorts of things that make people feel like I'm just a burden on society. And then when you have a medical profession or insurance companies that don't want to shell out the dollars to provide the services and things that Jason just talked about, those things make people think, well, maybe I'm just better off dead. And then to have a society and a medical profession say, maybe you're right about that, maybe you are better off dead, is just counter to biblical principles, counter to what is right, and something, again, why we're educating people here in Pennsylvania about why they need to fight this agenda here in our state.
All right. Well, let's talk about the immigration debate that's raging in America. We see that the headlines in Minneapolis, but this is having a great impact as well in New York State. Jason, the Trump administration is threatening in February, which is just a few days away now, to withhold billions in federal aid because of New York's sanctuary state policies. How realistic is this that funding could be cut off, and what kind of an impact would that have on New York?
Well, I think the threat is very real from the Trump administration, but I don't think that the state is going to allow that to happen. It is election year. There's a lot of bloviating here in New York, and people are positioning themselves as opposing the president. But at the end of the day, we're talking tens of billions of dollars, and that will have a negative blowback on the state. I think those running for office this year cannot afford to allow to happen.
Yeah. Michael, both Pennsylvania's U.S. Senators Fetterman and McCormick have called for investigations into these recent ICE-involved shootings. Of course, there have been a lot of pressure on the Trump White House to recall the Homeland Security Secretary over this. Given these high-profile deaths, do you think that it's time for the government to rethink how it enforces immigration policy in this country?
Well, the notion of removing illegal immigrants, especially those with criminal records, continues to poll at a strong level. Americans want to see that happen. How it is done and how it is promoted, with the rhetoric and stuff that is coming from the administration, especially from those like Kristi Noem, should be revisited. But it looks like there's a shift already taking place a little bit in Minnesota with some of the different personnel that they're putting in there. But again, I think, when I listen to Senator Fetterman and Senator McCormick, they're right to call for an honest investigation there. But even those two senators, Democrat and Republican here in Pennsylvania, agree that strong borders are needed, border security is needed, and we need to deal with those criminal illegal aliens that are here in this country.
All right, the debate continues. Moving on, let's talk dollars and cents, Jason. Governor Hochul last week unveiled a $260 billion state budget. Hard to wrap your mind around that kind of dollar amount, but it must be reconciled with a legislative version. What do you think are going to be the major sticking points in these budget negotiations over the next couple of months in Albany?
Well, the biggest sticking point is always how much to spend. And so there has not yet been an agreement in that mothership committee when those two houses come together and with the governor, they agree on the actual dollars the state has to spend. This $260 billion figure is just one that the governor simply has put out there, and now will be reconciled with the legislature. Keep in mind that number always grows. It never shrinks. So you are not looking at a $260 billion. You're probably looking about 5 to 10% higher than that before this is done. That will be the biggest sticking point. The second thing will then be whether or not to put in some of the tax demands that Mayor Mamdani has been pushing for in New York City, raising corporate taxes, putting in a tax system that hits more people on the taxes. The governor's been pretty much dead set against that. Again, it's an election year, but there is a great push from the Democratic Socialists of America to raise taxes on the so-called wealthy. That will likely be a sticking point that will impact what they can implement as far as their agenda in New York City and the rest of the state.
All right, we'll see last year's budget, the latest in 15 years. You mentioned it is an election year. Does that kind of motivate them to do the budget sooner? Who knows? Michael, speaking of budgets, Governor Shapiro is going to take the wraps off his on Tuesday. That's always an interesting day in Harrisburg. What are you expecting his legislative priorities will be in an election year?
Well, Governor Shapiro has two key priorities, I guess I would say, is one is being being reelected governor. He's in election year himself this year. But he'd also like to be president. He has his sights on 2028. He has a book out, and those are the things that motivate him. So I would look for him to present a sort of a budget address that suggests that he's kind of a bit of a moderate, but when you get into the details on it, he's going to be continuing to promote things like legalization of commercial sale of marijuana as a tax or revenue enhancement, even though that damages the state, and to spend more money on issues like education and other things. So it's going to be a very much of a leftist spend more money kind of position, but he's going to couch it in sensible rhetoric is the way he does things.
All right, we'll have to watch and see the big budget speech on Tuesday. And if folks have questions about any of the topics discussed this week, maybe you're curious about this assisted suicide law in New York. Jason, where can folks learn more about New York families?
NewYorkFamilies.org.
And stay informed on all the issues in Harrisburg as well. You have a wonderful website. Michael, where can folks find you?
PAFamily.org.
All right, gentlemen, thank you very much. Capital Connection comes your way every Friday during the Noon Report, or online anytime at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, or our website, familylife.org.
Good afternoon. Here is your Family Life regional weather forecast. Winter weather remains locked in across most of the eastern United States. Even Florida this weekend will see the Arctic chill, might even produce some flurries in parts of central and north Florida come Saturday night. Around our world, it is the extreme cold that will be the main story, but lake effect snow will continue mainly along the south shore of Lake Ontario. The call for this afternoon, frigid, a mix of sun and clouds, a few flurries, but a couple 3 inches of fresh lake fluff near Lake Ontario. High temperatures this afternoon, single digits and low teens, sub-zero wind chills. It stays frigid tonight, tomorrow, and Sunday with mixed skies and some lake effect continuing south and southeast of Lake Ontario. Low temperatures tonight, mostly below zero. High temperatures tomorrow, low teens, mid-teens then on Sunday.
All right, lots to consider weather-wise. Thank you very much, Kevin. And finally at noon for a Friday, kangaroo on the loose. Police in Cleveland, Texas are looking for the owner of a kangaroo they rounded up earlier this week. Locals in the town of Cleveland, that's about an hour north of Houston, spotted the Australian marsupial hopping along a local highway. Police and animal control, with the help of some civilians, were able to rescue that roo. Texas, by the way, is one of a dozen states that allow residents to own kangaroos as pets. And that's our world, the world we live in. Friday, the 30th of January. Have a wonderful and safe weekend. I'm Bob Price, Family Life News.
You've been listening to the Noon Report, heard weekdays on Family Life. Thank you for listening.
Thank you for listening to this Family Life News podcast. If you've been encouraged by what you've heard, please share it with others and click the subscribe button to automatically receive future episodes. Family Life is a listener-supported ministry. Podcasts like this are made possible by your financial partnership. Find out more at familylife.org.